Hello, welcome back. As you can see, today's video is going to be a bit of a shorter one. I think I mentioned this either in my last video or a few videos ago, but I've been kind of going through a crisis of art style. And so, although I'm still happy with the pieces that I'm making, I feel like technically they're going okay. Something just kind of feels like it's missing, and I haven't quite figured out what that piece is yet. And while I'm figuring it out, there's this drive to hold off on creating anything because you don't want to expend the energy or the effort or the materials to create an artwork if your style is going to make a big shift afterwards. Almost like, oh, well, I should figure out what I want to do before I make anything. But of course, it's a very counterproductive urge because, at least for myself, I know that the only way to kind of work my way through what I want to make is to just keep making and kind of learn what I can from each piece. But it has been hard in terms of motivation. And so this week what we're working on is just a little daffodil. I decided this one might be kind of fun to time lapse just because I knew it would be a really simple and straightforward drawing. Springtime is always a time of pretty high inspiration for me, considering that most of my drawings are based on things that I find outside near where I live. Springtime is great because all of the flowers start kind of poking up again in my garden. These daffodils are always some of the first to pop up. I love daffodils because I never have to plant them. They just keep coming back year after year. I have the same experience with my tulips and my roses. They just keep coming back every spring, and they're such a nice surprise and like a welcome into the season. So of course I was eager to see these daffodils. I'm expecting a couple more to pop up, but I went ahead and snipped this one off to bring it inside to draw. But yeah, this one's a pretty straightforward look at my drawing process. I know I've done a few time lapses in the past, but the most notable ones I can remember were when I was still working in dot work style. And so this is definitely a shift, adding color in. I don't always add a watercolor wash like I am here, but for especially flowers with like really vibrant colors, I find that adding the watercolor wash just makes it a lot easier to go back in and add details later, because you can really saturate the paper with color, or at least a base layer of color. And I am by no means a skilled or practiced watercolorist. I have never done any sort of like formal training in it. Everything is just kind of figuring it out as I go along, which, I don't know, so far seems to be working out okay. I'm sure that there is a lot that I could learn from doing some proper research. This is the only set of watercolors I've ever had. The brand is Handmade Modern. I'm not really sure what brands mean in terms of watercolors. Like, I don't really know what good brands or bad brands are. And kind of the same thing for the tools in terms of my like paintbrushes. I have a set of paintbrushes that I've just had for years and years, and that's what I use, but I do think it would be fun to delve a little bit more into it. I'm slowly getting a little bit more confident with painting, and so I do think a fun next step might be to look into getting some nicer brushes or a larger variety of paints. But for now, these simple washes seem to be working okay for me. I really do love going back over in colored pencil just for the amount of control that I'm able to have. But yeah, this daffodil was something that I could create this week that I don't know, I don't feel like it moves me forward in my art practice. It kind of just feels like another drawing as a stepping stone to figuring out what I want to make. I'm kind of having this struggle where for about a year now, my practice has really been focused on incorporating more color into my work and specifically drawing items from nature, drawings that I'm seeing in real time. So I'm working on reducing the amount of like photograph references I use. I've been trying really hard to improve my skills at drawing from life. I feel like for me, it becomes a much more valuable experience in terms of making colors more realistic, in terms of interpreting three-dimensional space and compressing it into the 2 dimensions of a drawing. I feel like working from life has been very valuable. But I think at the same time, what I'm kind of feeling is I'm seeing a lot of other artists on social media that are creating things in a very similar way to this. A lot of nature drawing, a lot of plants, animals, botanical, flora, fauna, all these sorts of drawings. And I love looking at them so much. But at the same time, I feel like what I'm creating now is something that kind of anybody could create. Like nothing about it is speaking very uniquely to my experience. And I think that's something I want to lean into more in my art practice is like, okay, what art do I have to make that nobody else could make? Because it's based off of my own experience. So I think that's going to be kind of the next step for me is figuring out how to combine the techniques and things that I've practiced all together and figure out how to create something new. But for now, here's a simple time lapse of how I draw a flower. And I hope that was enjoyable to watch. And I'm excited to see what happens in the future. Thanks so much for joining me. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.